punto sarebbe bello andare nudi al museo, chissà. Benvenuti e benvenute in un nuovo episodio di Museum Education Podcast. L'unico podcast al mondo che parla esclusivamente di educazione museale. E oggi è una puntata straordinaria, non vedo l'ora che inizi questa puntata, quindi fra pochi secondi la farò iniziare. 2 paroline prima di iniziare, sarà una puntata completamente in inglese. Ci sarà come ospite Gill Nicol, direttamente dall'Australia, per la precisione vicino Sidney, mi ha detto, insomma, in questo paesino nelle Blue Mountain, dove ha questa bellissima casa di campagna di montagna, scusate, non di campagna, con tanto legno, insomma una bella cucina, e chiaramente non si parlerà italiano. Ci siamo lasciati un po' prendere la mano quando abbiamo registrato questo episodio, quindi sarà una puntata un po' più lunga del solito, ma a noi non ce ne frega niente perché le cose belle non hanno bisogno di un tempo limite, quindi siamo qui apposta per estendere e per espandere i discorsi che interessano a noi. And so, welcome to Gill Nicol. Hi Gill, how are you?
Oh, hi, it's so good to see you again, Alberto. It's been a year since I met you.
Yeah, exactly, a year. And you know, it's a pleasure for me to see you again because it was a very long time, and I missed you a lot because you have such a great energy to give to other people that I think it was unmissable on this podcast.
Well, I was in Naples for the first time, and Naples is so full of energy anyway. I just kept saying this is an amazing place. The energy in the city, it's brilliant. I loved it. I loved my time there, and it was excited to be here and just talk.
Yeah, Gill, just for all the audience that will that maybe don't know you, I will start, of course, from a very simple question because I know you very well, and also maybe other people will know who you are, but maybe one or two don't know, so we will try to give something to them, and if you want you can ask my first question. So who are you?
What a question to ask someone when they're 61 years old, because I can go, oh, I've been many people, but yes, I find myself now Gill Nicol, living just outside Sidney in the beautiful Blue Mountains. I need to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I live and that I'm meeting you on tonight, which is the Darra and Gundagara peoples. It's really important here in Australia to acknowledge the traditional owners because it always was and always will be Aboriginal land, and I pay my respects to these peoples, past, present, and very privileged to live here. So I've been in Australia now for 8 years. So I came here when I was 53 years old with a suitcase. I left the UK, where I'd lived all my life, to start a new job as Director of Audience Engagement at the Museum of Contemporary Art Australia, MCA for short. And I left the MCA this year in May for various reasons. But one of the main ones being that 8 years, almost 8 years, working there was the longest I've ever worked anywhere. I trained as an artist many years ago. I grew up as a teenager in England in the 70s going, I'm never going to get married and have children. I'm just going to be an artist. And, I never got married and had children. That was true. But I stopped being an artist in my mid-30s, probably because I realised I was never going to be I wasn't going to be a really great artist, and I wanted to make a difference. I felt I had to say and do. So I started working with contemporary art and audiences. I just sort of fell into it. Shall I keep talking? Is this interesting?
Absolutely.
So I was I was like 35 years old, and realised I didn't want to make art anymore. So that was a big identity crisis. But at the time I was working at the Henry Moore Institute in Leeds, northern city in England, and Henry Moore Institute is the Centre for the Study of Sculpture. It doesn't show Henry Moore's work, it's just funded by the Henry Moore Foundation. So it's a privately funded organisation, beautiful spaces, but very white cube, very conceptual work that we show. And at the time I worked on reception. I'd gone back to study, to do an MA in feminism and visual arts with Griselda Pollock at the University of Leeds. And for money, I just, started working on reception. And I've always got an opinion, and, when I'm working on a weekend, and families used to come in up these big stairs and they'd say, is this an office? Is this a gallery? Are we allowed in here? And there's also not much interpretation. I mean, this is back in 1996 and 97. And it used to make me really cross because I was like, why, you don't have access. People of Leeds don't really have access to this work. So myself and others that were looking after the work, hosts who were artists, we went to the powers that be and said, you can pay us a minimum wage and we will do interpretation for you. And they agreed, which was great. And that started it all really for me, that making contemporary art accessible for as many different people as possible. Because contemporary art is, can be so seen as so elite, in forbidding spaces, and it takes a lot for people to cross the threshold, and I think all my work since that time, all those years ago, has been around that. I love contemporary art, don't get me wrong, and I know a lot about it, and I love talking about it. Yeah. And I am never in a position where I'm going to be telling people they have to like contemporary art, because it's just fine not to like various things as well. But there are lots of artists out there making really interesting work. So the more you see, the more you understand what draws you in. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole another conversation. Is that enough? Start with, who am I?
You tell me if you think that's enough for describing who you are. For me, that's okay. It should be fine by you. Yeah. I think it's very interesting the way you approached this field, because of course you are on a podcast that is called Museum Education, so we talk about museum education in a very large way because it embraces a lot of things. It's interesting how you started in this field, because of course when you were in Harry Moore it wasn't a gallery, no, institute, sorry.
Yeah.
Of course you found people that actually didn't get really access to the place, even though it was like information or anything. So you started from that point to maybe ask yourself, okay, I love contemporary art, but it's not just about us, because I also love contemporary art. But when you love something so much, you want to share it. So when you see that other people don't have the instrument or don't have the possibility because there are not the condition to experience what actually you are experiencing, so you start to question yourself. And that leads to my second question, which is the question that leads all the podcasts and every person that passed by here should go by, even though it's a very personal question for me. And the question is, what actually means museum education for you? What is for you museum education?
Yeah, so I think when I started working in museum education, let's call it that, at the time it was called gallery education in England. It was soon after that experience at the Henry Moore Institute, because I had a voice and I kept saying this isn't good enough. I actually got offered a job as an education coordinator for a big lottery project, one of the first lottery projects in England, giving money to an enormous public art exhibition that stretched across the neck of England in the north, from Hull through to Leeds, through to Manchester and Liverpool. And I got asked to be the Leeds education coordinator. So essentially I had to work with 8-9 artworks from artists from all over the world. James Turrell, amazing, like Alison Wilding, all sorts of people. Joseph Boyce, planted a Joseph Boyce oak tree outside the Henry Moore Institute. So my role was to develop public programs for audiences and a range of different audiences, and I didn't know anything really. It was only because I understood how interesting and relevant contemporary art can be. Artists have so much to say, and a lot of the work is about how we think and feel and believe in the world and the systems that we're in, and helps us reflect on so many things. And I really love engaging in dialogue about contemporary art. So I was one of four. I was one of four, a team of four in each town, in each city, doing public programs. It was a fascinating experience because it was actually new. Gallery education is as a pedagogy, because it is a pedagogy, was quite new at that time. In England, in the mid-90s, people who were working in gallery education, museum education, there were quite a lot of wonderful young women who had been teachers. And everyone was learning. But I was very lucky in that the person who was head of education at Tate Liverpool was Toby Jackson. And he was the person that managed this team of four. And Toby was a man in his 50s at the time and had worked since the 80s, right at the beginning of gallery education in England, and had worked at Tate Liverpool since it opened, and was just a brilliant mentor and a brilliant person. So at the end of that 8 months of work, I had learned how not to do things and how to do things. So for me, museum education is about connecting, it's about sharing, it's about creating, it's about inviting people in to do a variety of things, to talk, to look, to interact, to make. And you can do a mix of those in different ways at any one time with different groups. I think the other classic thing about museum education is it's embedded, you would say first and foremost, it's embedded in a schools program. That schools go, it's some of that traditional thing about why museums were set up in the first place as places for education. But increasingly over the years, we've seen how many museums and galleries work with specific communities and groups, people with dementia, young people, early learning. And so you become very refined in working with those groups. I must say it's been an utter pleasure to have worked at the MCA for 8 years, working with specific groups like that, because by the time I got to the MCA, I was very involved with accessibility and inclusion, but also around research and evaluation. In England, it's for many years, before I left in 2015, it was always about articulating the value of this kind of work and articulating the value of art and contemporary art. I had the same conversations for years and years, does my head in now, but there we are. So when I came to the MCA, I was like, hardly anyone knows, there's hardly any evaluation going on of the wonderful programs that everyone's doing. So let me put in place training the artist educators, beautiful programs that they're delivering. We set up new programs and we grew programs. We did a big research project in early learning, looking at the same families over a 5-year period, coming in to the MCA 4 times a year. Yeah, I know. And we did that with a university, Macquarie University. So I think that for me, obviously, I've been involved with it for nearly 30 years. So for me now, it's embedded in that research agenda, so that you really understand what you're doing and you can adapt and shift. And because, if we're not careful, gallery education is also something that can be cut. You know, in this day and age, everyone's really struggling, you know, around the world with various things, and it's enough just to have everyone back from COVID and get good exhibitions up, you know, and then that's first and foremost. Even though I work with audiences, I'm like, we need good exhibitions. That's it. And then we work with the exhibitions. And then marketing is key, because if no one knows those exhibitions are on, no one will come. So you're not gonna shrink your marketing team if you've got any sense. But you could stop doing certain programs with audience engagement. Because, you know, where is the money for that kind of thing? Yeah, when you're saying that, coming to Australia was a revelation, because Australia operates with a philanthropic, I can only just say that, philanthropic model, where people give money. And in England, that's not the case. In England, there are a number of key foundations, like Paul Hamlin and Urban Foundation. And then there's the Arts Council England, and they are the ones that give out money for things. And that's about it. Whereas in Australia, you have a raft of wonderful individuals who have made money in Australia and want to give it away and want to see change happen. And so it's not, I'm not saying it's really easy, but it is easy-ish to get money for things like working with people with dementia and their care partners, because everyone is touched by, a lot of people are touched by that in their lives. Yeah.
It's incredible how you are mixing your answer with your actual story, which it's not something that I hear so much. It's a very you follow the course in a very beautiful way. I wanted to ask you, because you said when you were in MCA, which was until yesterday, we can say, because it's a very recent. It's a very recent breakup. You worked a lot with different kind of people with dementia, early learning, and so on. So you get along in a way with the term accessibility in always researching and always retreating, maybe sometimes, because you see, you know, it's a subject that always evolve, and because it's a very fresh subject and so on. And I wanted to ask you something more related to this, also because I saw you last year doing a specific workshop, so I know something about you and how you work. And for example, here in Italy, we usually associate the accessibility practice for disabled people with the art therapy, because maybe people think that therapy, you know, disabled people. In fact, I don't agree with this association, also because I don't know if there can be actually a real art therapy, even though, because, you know, art itself, it can be therapeutic on its own. But I want to ask you also, because in this field you are actually very more expert than me. What is art therapy, and it can have any relation to audience involvement? Because, you know, I said mine, and maybe my vision on this subject it's a bit different. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So interesting, isn't it? So I had to make that distinction really clear at the MCA, because, as I mentioned, the MCA works with a group of up to 30 artist educators. Now, around the world, they're called different things, aren't they? Artist teachers or whatever. But at the MCA, these are artists, first and foremost. They are not art therapists. Art therapists are trained to work in a creative way with people who have usually got a prescription of mental illness or some kind of illness, who have an illness. And they are trained to do that, and they can support whatever that means. So to be really clear that we're not putting our artist educators in that position. We're not employing art therapists so that they can be artists who believe in pedagogy, who believe in learning. Now, saying that, you've talked about me doing that workshop in Naples last year. Now, that was about art and well-being. So a few years ago now, when Lisanne McGregor was director of the MCA, and we had bushfires and floods, and then COVID was, just happening, and we sat down together and I said, what do we need to do for an audience which is becoming increasingly vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable? Everyone is walking on eggshells, bushfires in particular around this neck of the woods, it's really scary. And so we started talking with the Mind Room in Melbourne, who are a psychology centre experts. So we started working with those experts. And I think that is a really clever way to do it. Because, my expertise is contemporary art and audiences. It isn't the psychology of well-being. But working together, and we worked together for 2 years, training 6 artist educators. And it took 2 years because of COVID, because we had endless breaks and everyone wasn't, the museum was shut. And yes, anyway, long story short, we ended up with a programme which was going to be for the general public and to try and attract those publics that I think everyone in the museum and gallery world know are out there, and they are an audience which is curious but unconfident about contemporary art, and we all want to find ways to encourage them in, because we know if they're curious but they're nervous, what's the thing that's going to make them come across the door, enter? And so that's why you see programs where it's like art and gardening or art and yoga, and they are strategies really to introduce people gently to contemporary art. So art and well-being really worked because it did attract a whole load of people that had never been to the MCA before. So back when we were planning it, I said to Lisanne, let's try and do something in a lunchtime so that we are having people come in their lunch breaks, because the MCA is really close to the Central Business District, CBD. And it'll be 45 minutes to an hour, and we just look at one artwork and create a space which feels safe for people to articulate their feelings. So the whole premise of it was around articulating your feelings. So in a usual, generic gallery introduction with a group, you might ask, what do you see? And you'd go around the group and people say, I see a shape of a monkey made of felt. And then someone else would say, oh, I'm seeing a car. Where'd you get monkey from? And it's like, it's okay. Everyone's take on it is relevant. But at the end of it, you've gone around the group and people have said different things or similar things. But what you've done is scaffolded new meaning together really quickly. And everyone's got excited because you're going, God, I couldn't see a monkey and now I can. So there are all these different readings of what people see. And that is all fine, because we bring our full selves to contemporary art. And at any given day, we could be happy or sad or, calm or whatever we are. And that's all okay. There's not one meaning. That's the joy of contemporary art. So the Art and Wellbeing programme was asking that very first question at the beginning, what do you feel when you look at this artwork? So to prepare a group that had never met each other before, and that group was about 10 or 12 people sitting round an artwork or in a sort of horseshoe shape, looking at the artwork on the wall. We started off with a kind of close your eyes, everyone, and just come into yourself. So kind of meditation. But we used the acknowledgement to country, which I said earlier about acknowledging the traditional owners, as a way to do that. So when I started off the workshop in, I can't remember, that beautiful museum on the hill that I did that in.
Ah, you mean Capodimonte?
Looking out towards... Yeah, that's it. Well done. Well said. I would never have said that properly. And the idea was that I had always planned to run a workshop for fellow, people who were involved in the conference, fellow learning people from all around the world. I had about 24 people or something in the workshop, but everyone was really tired. We had taken some time to get to the museum that morning, and we were already in our second or third day, and everyone was like, where's the coffee? And we had missed out on coffee. So everyone was a bit jaded. And I said, okay, look, you're just going to be punters. You're going to be participants. I'm going to do this workshop for you as a gift. Rather than me doing it and analysing it as we're going along, you just shut your eyes. I'd like you to just start to rise out of your body and go up and look out of the window and look down on this land and the waters, Naples, the bay, and the beauty there, and think about where you come from and what your country looks like. Anyway, so really settling people in feeling about where they are at that moment. And that is always a very good place to start, where then you're then talking about, now I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about this artwork? And it doesn't matter if you haven't got anything to say either. But usually people, they start to articulate their feelings and again, scaffold new meaning really quickly. And then there was a strategy where I'd brought about 100 different words in, and I put them on the ground on a mat and asked everyone to choose 6 words which made more sense of the feeling that they had. So for example, if someone said, I feel a sense of awe in front of this artwork, then they might be choosing wonderment or joy, or excitement or whatever it is. So you start to develop your vocabulary around your emotions, because the mind room, their sense of this program was if people can start to have more control over how they feel and can articulate that, then it calms you down. You feel more in control. You understand your emotions. And so many people don't have a lot of words for their emotions. It's all bad, sad, glad, right? Apparently they're the top 3. So basically we ran a pilot program for eight months. We also ran a course alongside that for people who wanted to delve a bit deeper and come in on a Saturday for 2 hours. And then that was also about making as well. For some people, it became a bit of a lifeline. They were coming in from like miles away, kilometers away, coming back 4 or 5 times. At the end of the session, often someone would stand up and say, I'm going for a coffee, who wants to join me? And they became their own support group. Basically, we did an evaluation of the whole thing, and I would say, really firmly that the impact it had was on loneliness. So how we measured well-being was to, at the beginning of each session, ask people how they felt, and then at the end of it, what they felt, afterwards, which is that sort of classic measurement. But really, it was, I learned so much. It just had an incredible impact. And so now I'm not at the MCA anymore. I really want to create my own program around art and well-being. So I've been looking at other holistic ways to do that. I learned a lot when I was in Naples, because a number of wonderful, Italian peers were doing well-being around using the body, working with the body. And I think that's very interesting as well. All the different learning styles we use as people, whether some people want to talk, some people want to move their bodies, some people want to just listen.
Yeah, I remember you were in team with Irene from the Pecci, which she's amazing. She's fantastic.
And just to say, Alberto, that from that forum we created a global art and well-being group, and we meet online like every few months and talk about well-being, art and well-being, what everyone's doing. People from Benessere and Italy, England.
That's amazing.
Everywhere.
And
Greece.
That I think I think it's the best thing that that could happen in the last year, because I mean it's the motive that the EDI project was created for. So, I mean, create connection. And you see, you remembered me when I interviewed the Laure Goeman from Brussels. And actually in Belgium I discovered that the educational department, it's not called the educational department but participatory department. So I found it very, very amusing. And I also think that, I mean, the first question you said before, usually when we have people in front of us, we try to ask, what do you see, you know, for creating a relation between people within the artwork, and then starting a dialogue with them. And I mean, for creating something more like social than instructional, okay? And I think it's, I mean, for me, it could be very hard to try to ask people, how do you feel in front of an artwork, because, for example, I'm not formed exactly in or with psychology and stuff like this, so it can be very hard. And you know what, I always see a lot of times people that, how can I say, they improvise to make educational activity in museum, that try to force sometimes feelings to get out of people. But I mean, you can't expect that an activity must get to that point, because it's not always that, especially if you are not trained to do that, because it can be also very I mean, someone once told me that people involved in a thing like this, they started to how do you say in English, when you can talk properly, when you do like this,
stutter.
Stuttering. Stuttering.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, it took us 2 years to work with the mind room so that artist educators would feel comfortable about dealing with the impact that could have on people's feelings. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. And that's exactly what you're saying, because it was stuttering. And I mean, it's incredible how when you interact with people, you can actually create very great problems, especially when you are talking in a field that education is involved. So you have a great responsibility.
We do, but all, you know, in those 2 years of talking with artist eds and the training and their anxiety about it, you know, Joe Mitchell, amazing Dr. Joe Mitchell from the Mind Room would say, I hear you, but you know, 95% of the time you're going to have it's going to be a joyous experience, you know. But it's like that's was had 2 artist educators with the group, so that if anything happened, an artist educator could take somebody off and add strategies in which to calm them down and just listen really to them. But yes, it was so worth doing. It was really, really valuable. Really valuable. Yeah. But yes, you have to be careful. You can't just go and do it. So thank you for saying that. That's a really important bit. I'm always like, yeah, it was brilliant. But you know, I think out of the 8 months, it was just twice where one person got they were upset when they arrived. And what I know, the other thing that I always used to say across that time was, you know, artist educators, you're holding the space for everybody, but you're not doing it alone. The group itself will hold the space and look after each other, but also the artwork does a lot of work as well. The artwork's in the middle. You know, I know it sounds weird, but it actually does a lot of work for you, because that's what you come back to. You know, and you're looking at one thing for 45 minutes, which sounds like, when was the last time anyone did that? But it's just amazing what you get from doing that. And so it's very layered, you know, so people are like, I can't believe we just sat there and talked about this thing for 45 minutes. It's amazing. I love it. Or people were like, I feel anxious about this artwork. And then after 45 minutes, they didn't, or vice versa. And it's all fine. And it's also about saying it's okay to feel anxious. It's okay. And you can have more than one emotion at any one time. You know, like someone saying, I feel awe, but I've also got this little kernel of anxiety. but I've got that anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like acknowledging your feelings is actually such a release.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally agree.
The fundamental thing about being heard by other people and having value about what you're saying, it's not rocket science, but when I think about it, I think, really when you talk about it, it's like you just set something up for a group of people to look at an artwork, but it was behind it so much. But really, wouldn't it be great if we were doing that a lot more? Would make us...
Yeah. Also, I wanted to ask you one more thing, because we are, of course, talking also about accessibility when we talk about stuff like this, and you also told before that you're actually into accessibility, of course, because when we're talking about well-being and stuff like this, it's inevitable. I wanted to make also this parallel with Italy, because for example, sometimes here it's very difficult to think accessibility outside also of the disabled, or maybe thinking about something that could be accessible to everyone, not just for the disabled people, because we don't have actually the mindset for thinking that disability is something that regard every one of us, even though just with the age we will face a problem maybe related to a disabled condition. I was talking about this with Maricara Caccheri a few weeks ago, and of course it is something that in Italy we really struggle.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, it's really difficult not to normalize accessibility for all of category of people. And I mean, it could be also possible for museum to be 100% accessible. Why we have this difficult to put ourselves in that mindset, to think that okay, accessibility is not just for someone who can't walk, but it's for everyone.
Yeah, really good point. And again, a really layered answer to that. Where to start? So, accessibility covers a lot of different things. It covers the physical aspects, ramps and all sorts of things, and clear signage that you can see. But there's all sorts of other things as well for different groups, like, those that are deaf, particularly capital D deaf, which means, deaf as a culture, and people who sign language, like here it's in Australia, it's Auslan, is their first language. So providing things that are accessible to the deaf community. Same with audio description, same with alt text, which appears on websites. All those things take time and money. So it's about how you decide what you will prioritize and invest in, and where you get the money from to do that. At the same time, it's about developing relationships with those communities so that they understand that you are for them and you want to work with them. I mean, there is, this classic thing called universal design, where you design something for a specific reason for someone with a disability. Say you make your labels on the wall bigger, the text bigger, so people can, low vision can see it then better. And then you find that older people whose eyesight is not as good as it was really enjoy that. People who, or you make the labels easy English, you make them easier to read so that they're more accessible for those with, who are neurodivergent, or with autism, or level, all sorts of levels of autism. And then you find people with English as a second language, find it easier to read, So it's that thing where you create something for a specific reason, and then everyone can enjoy it more. Universal design, it's really important. I think one of the key things that needs to happen in the museum and gallery world, if you're thinking, as a staff member about any changes are advancements in accessibility, you should co-design that with, or co-produce that and co-design that with the person with the disability. No more getting the wheelchair out from the store and going in it as an able-bodied person and see what that feels like. Work with the community, work with the deaf and disabled community together, because they really, and you can't just work with a disabled person. Like if you work with someone who's deaf, then they're not going to understand at all what the needs are of someone who's blind. So really it's about leaning in, moving forward, working, reaching out and working with people with disability. And lots of people are afraid of doing those things. They're afraid of, oh, how do we communicate? Or, I might say the wrong thing. I mean, that's classic, right? But, just step forward, because that's better than being too scared to start. And 1 in 5 Australians have a disability. And that is a sort of classic percentage, stat around the world. So it should be similar in Italy, right? I mean, I'm hard of hearing. I started wearing hearing aids in my mid-30s around my crisis about not being an artist. Maybe it was all connected. But, because I've got a personal interest, I was like, I've got a genetic disorder where I can't hear low tones. So it's only going to get worse. I better start getting involved with deaf culture. And I did that for about a year in England and then realised I wasn't deaf enough. There's all sorts of nuances that are in the disability community. But it really opened my eyes into, leaning in, not being afraid, embracing it, talking people. It's really important, and employing people with disability as well. One of the things they did a few years in at the MCA was, say what we need to employ an artist who is deaf or identifies as deaf, because they can reach directly out to the deaf community in Sidney. And that's been a real success, employing 2 artist educators who are deaf for the last 5 years.
Yeah, but there was Annalisa Trasatti from Tactile Museum Omero here in Italy, that one of the things that she said here was that when you are projecting something for a specific target, disabled people, in our example, people that cannot see or maybe have problem with the eye and stuff like this, it's also an opportunity to get in touch with association and people that work with people with this problem. And sometimes when you see work, educational work inside museum, they are not always involved, at least here. And it's a really they lose a very great occasion to make something very beautiful and very interesting, also because they can interact with the actual person, then they can create
but it makes sense when you say it out loud,
yeah, absolutely. And Gill, I wanted to ask you just one more question, very fast if you want. No, don't worry. I just wanted to ask you if there is a project that maybe you want to talk about, something that really got into your heart, something that maybe tomorrow you will go out and you say, okay, let's do it 100 more times, because it's one of the project that you are most in love.
Well, Alberto, I'm going to share something that I did when I was at the MCA. A few years in 2017, the MCA bought an artwork by an artist called Stuart Ringholt, and it's a nude tour. And it's where the artist is in the nude and he does a tour of the MCA collection. I heard the artist speak about it and I thought, I need to go on that nude tour because I'm director of audience engagement and we own the artwork. So I went on one of the tours with no clothes on, which was, very interesting to do in a place where you work. And the people who were looking after the artwork are your staff, with clothes on. But it's a very amazing experience because, well, as soon as everyone's got their clothes off, it really feels like the right thing to do. And it's amazing being in the gallery with no phone, no shoes. It's just you and the artwork and all the colours bouncing off the walls on your skin. I mean, it's great. So that led to me doing 2 nude tours. So I became the person that led the 2 tours. And I did them both for women. One of them was for International Women's Day, the MCA collection. And then the other one was for when we had a show by Pipillotti Rist. So I don't know if you know Pipilotti's work, she's Swiss, but it's very immersive and beautiful. And, you know, you're surrounded by videos on the ceiling and the walls. One of the rooms had 40 beds in it, and you lie on the beds and you look up at the ceiling. Anyway, so I did a nude tour for women one evening of that. And I will never forget it. I will never forget it because it's just this liberating, life-affirming thing to do. And it's such a leveler, you know, because with no clothes on, you don't know who anyone is. You don't know if they're a journalist or a philanthropist or, you know, a cleaner. You don't know anything. And so it's just this amazing experience. I will never forget it. I don't think I'll be doing any more of those. Now I'm 61. But I was really glad I did it when I was 56. It was a bit like not being afraid, you know, not being afraid and seeing artwork in a different way. Yeah. So that was, I know it's not many people are going to emulate that, but I thought I'd share it.
Well, I mean, we can always try. I mean, nothing can stop me tomorrow to go inside the museum like this. Maybe we have, I will face some something after, but I mean, I can always enter and then get my clothes off. That's something to try, even against their will. And of course, I'm joking.
It's another form of public program.
Yeah. Of course, I'm joking. For anyone who is hearing this, of course, it's a joke. So please don't call anyone, please. Okay, Jill, that was a really I wasn't expecting something like this, so it's amazing. Okay, one last question before that we're gonna say goodbye for now. Is that maybe that you have some suggestion that can help people to go through that path? I mean, and they can be for professional, for students, for anyone. It can be book, films, TV series, anything that maybe it can help.
Yeah, I mean, because I've been around a long time, some of my key reference points are not recent. They're going back a bit, you know. I was always very keen on Nina Simon, who worked in the US, and she had Museum 2.0, which was a great website, and she wrote a book called The Participatory Museum, which you can download for free online. I mean, it's 10 years old now, but it's still really relevant. And then another person that I was just in awe of and heard speak once was Ken Robinson. So Ken Robinson died a few years ago, but Ken Robinson's got, I think, the most watched TED Talk on creativity in schools and how we squeeze creativity out of children. Because I think creativity for me is absolutely key. You know, when we were talking about art therapy earlier, and it's all about creativity. It's all about encouraging people we can all be creative. One of the other key people that I used to love reading, she's not around anymore, was Anna Kraft, and she wrote a lot of books around early learning, but she looked at creativity, called it Big C and Small C, where Big C, creativity is, you know, how we think about Picasso and artists. Well, they're the big C. And we are all little C, like little bits of creativity that we all do every day, where we look in the fridge and go, okay, I've got an onion and this and that and a courgette, and I'm going to make a recipe, I'm going to make food. That's a creative act. So it's about breaking down those barriers. I can't tell you, and you must have heard this a lot as well, everyone has, where people people used to come into workshops and go, I can't draw. You know, a teacher told me years ago that I can't draw. Drives me nuts. It's like, you know, we all have, it's not about that. You know, it's about how rigid we've made what creativity is, you know, and it's the legacy of that so many adults carry around. So I think that's been a lot of my work, is to break that all down, you know, empower people.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, but you say it like this, but it's real. It's an instrument that you use every day because, I mean, Naples, for example, is the perfect example of creativity applied in everyday life, because people here invent new kind of works, and they must have a great creativity to go on. Also because today Naples, it's a very fermented city, but in the past it was a very, very, very hard city to live in. So today it's much easier, but I mean, creativity really had a great role in everything in Naples, and also
it's full of, you know, a wonderful art from years ago, and also graffiti.
Yeah.
You know, there's tons of it around. I remember. It's great.
Well, Gill, it was I cannot say more than amazing conversation, because we had prepared some question, but of course we flied all over, because it was the destiny that let us meet together. So I cannot wait to meet you. I will not come to Australia, never. Sorry, but spiders for me it's too much to handle. So maybe kangaroos, okay, but spiders, no, sorry, it's too much for me. So maybe we'll see in physical here in Naples another time, or maybe in England, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
I'll turn up your doorstep one day.
Okay,
have a coffee.
Okay, that's good for me. But maybe, we can always, today we have internet, and then we have these amazing instruments, so we can talk all around the world, and I think it's amazing. I cannot thank you enough.
Oh, no, thank you so much for inviting me. I was delighted when you got in touch, and, you know, thanking you for asking me. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's mutual. Well, Gill, I will leave to your day. So thank you again for coming here, and
thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you next time.
Ok, ciao.
Ciao. Ed eccoci qui, quindi alla fine di questo lungo episodio, ma meraviglioso. Gill, io non vedo l'ora di rivederti, veramente, perché vabbè, speriamo presto, una persona veramente meravigliosa. Dunque, per questo episodio è tutto. Io vi ricordo che questo progetto, il podcast, è un progetto interamente autoprodotto, quindi si sostiene grazie al vostro di sostegno. Quindi mi raccomando, condividete questa iniziativa, ascoltate gli episodi, scrivetemi su Instagram. Ecco, se vi va, magari iscrivetevi anche al canale Telegram, mandatemi un messaggio. A me fa sempre piacere ricevere messaggi, ne ricevo diversi al giorno, ma a me piace, insomma, avere interazioni. È quello che rende vivo e rende anche sensato questo progetto, quello di riuscire a creare una rete che non sia soltanto da me a voi, ma fra tutti quanti noi. Proprio per questo sul gruppo Telegram è molto diverso. Sul gruppo Telegram potete iscrivervi a trovare non soltanto altri professionisti di questo settore, ma anche me, che metto di tanto in tanto, ultimamente molto spesso devo dire, news di bandi, eventi, incontri e così via, quindi cose interessanti, ecco. Bene, io direi che non ci resta altro che salutarci e darci appuntamento a domenica prossima, sempre alle ore 12, su Spotify, Apple Podcast e YouTube. E niente, male che va, ci vediamo insomma al museo tutti nudi, così. Scherzo! Non sia mai, qualcuno mi prende sul serio, è un casino. Vabbè, ciao!